The sun baked the earth until it cracked, and the wind carried grit that stung the eyes and parched the throat. Dry Creek, a rough-cut frontier town nestled between canyon bluffs and coyote howls, didn't offer much to strangers, least of all Mercy. Jude Mercer was no stranger. Tall, with a crooked nose and gunfighter eyes, he rode into town with a limp in his left leg and a burden heavier than the gear on his saddle. A former outlaw turn scout, he'd once ridden with gangs that burned towns like Dry Creek to the ground. But war changed the man, and guilt carved deeper than bullets ever could. He stopped outside the saloon, his horse pawing the dirt. Inside, it smelled of whiskey, gun oil, and resentment. Jude didn't care. He needed a drink and a place to rest. Maybe, if he was lucky, he could forget the screaming he heard every night, the cries of the Apache woman whose life he couldn't save 2 years ago when the army razed her village. But fate hadn't finished with Jude Mercer yet. As he stepped back onto the street, a scream shattered the hot afternoon. A rider galloped in from the west trail, dragging something or someone behind his horse. Jude's got twisted. A woman, bound and blooded. She bounced against the desert floor, her black hair thick with dust and blood. The rider yelled something in Spanish, laughing as the townsfolk scrambled. A few cheered. Apache. That's what they saw. Not a woman, not a human being, just a savage. But Jude saw something else. A face he remembered. Chapter 2, The Woman in Chains. Her name was Nalin, which meant blossom in her native tongue. But she looked nothing like a flower when Jude rushed toward her, cut the rope, and pointed his Colt at the rider. "Let her go," Jude growled. The man sneered. "She's Apache. We caught her near the waterhole. She's probably scouting for her tribe." Jude didn't lower his gun. "I don't care if she's a queen of Mexico. You drag a woman like that again, and you'll be the one bleeding on the trail." Tension cracked like lightning. But the townsfolk weren't about to challenge a man like Jude Mercer. The rider spat in the dirt and backed off. "She's cursed," he warned. "They say she survived the massacre, that her spirit is tied to the fire god." Jude ignored him. He knelt beside Nalin, her breath ragged and shallow. Her lips moved, whispering in Apache. Her eyes flickered open, and recognition passed between them like a silent lightning strike. She remembered him. Chapter 3, The Fire That Never Died. He carried her to Doc Avery's cabin just outside town, despite the stares and murmurs. Doc was old and half-blind, but wise enough not to ask questions when Jude arrived with a half-dead Apache woman in his arms. For days, Nalin hovered between life and death. Jude stayed by her side. When she woke, she didn't speak. Not at first, but her eyes watched him closely, measured, wary, haunted. "I thought you died," Jude finally said one night, handing her water. Nalin's voice was a rasp. "They tried." He sat back, eyes heavy. "I saw what the cavalry did to your village. I was there, scouting. I told them you were peaceful. They didn't listen." Nalin's lips trembled. "You warned us. You stayed behind to fight. Your father was chief, wasn't he?" She nodded, and tears slid down her cheeks, carving clean lines through the dust. "They killed him. My mother. Everyone." Jude swallowed hard. "I tried to get back, but they—" She touched his arm gently, silencing him. "You came. That matters." They sat in silence, the kind that stitched wounds deeper than flesh. Chapter 4, Burning Bridges. Word spread fast in Dry Creek. Jude Mercer had taken up with an Apache woman. "Let them talk," he told Nalin, who had begun to move around, her strength returning. But it wasn't just gossip. The mayor, Elias Granger, sent a warning. "You're risking your neck, Mercer. Folks are scared. They think she's got Apache warriors ready to burn us down." "They are fools," Jude said, keeping his hand near his revolver. Elias narrowed his eyes. You're falling for her, ain't you? Jude didn't answer, because he didn't need to. He saw it every time Nalin stood in the wind, her long hair untamed, her eyes carrying sorrow like the desert carrot heat. He saw it when she smiled faintly while tending the chickens outside Doc's place. And he felt it, God help him, when she laid her hand on his chest one evening and whispered, "You saved me again." But peace doesn't last long on the frontier. Chapter 5, A Reckoning of Fire. One night, the town bell rang out. Smoke curled in the distance. "Apache!" someone yelled. "They're here." Jude ran outside, gun drawn, but what he saw chilled him. A war party, not to attack, but to find Nalin, a tall warrior dismounted, painted in red clay and feathers. He looked directly at Jude. "I am her cousin," he said in broken English. "She is alive because of you. We call you Zutagoya, sacred husband." Jude blinked. "Sacred? What?" Nalin stepped out, barefoot on the sand, her eyes shining with emotion. "It is our way. You saved me twice, once in war and once from shame. The spirits have bound us." Jude looked from her to the warrior, then to the townspeople gathering behind with pitchforks and rifles. A choice, a woman or the world he knew. He took her hand. "I don't care what they call me. I ain't letting you go again." Chapter 6, Gunsmoke and Loyalty. The town exploded in rage. A mob formed. Jude and Nalin stood back to back as the first bullet struck the date. He didn't want blood, but he wouldn't run. Doc stood beside them with an old shotgun. Surprisingly, others joined. Old Widow May, who'd lost a child in the Army's war. Timothy, the blacksmith, whose own wife was once called Savage for her Mexican blood. They formed a line, not of hate, but of hope. The standoff lasted till dawn. No bloodshed, just silence. And then Elias loaded his rifle. "Let them go," he said gruffly. "This town's seen enough ghosts." Chapter 7, Redemption in the Red Rocks. Jude and Nalin left Dry Creek 2 days later, riding east toward the Canyonlands, where people had gathered in secret. He didn't speak much on the trail. Didn't need to. She rode beside him, healed, proud, strong. When they reached the canyon, her tribe welcomed her. They welcomed him. There was a ceremony, a fire, a dance, a promise under stars older than empires. Nalin took his hands in his, her voice soft but unshaking. "Jude Mercer, outlaw of the white world, my heart sees you. My soul binds to yours." He choked back tears. He'd found redemption, not in a church, not in whiskey, but in the eyes of a woman who had every reason to hate him, and chose to love instead. Epilogue, legends in the wind. They say if you ride through the Red Canyon at sunset, you'll hear the cry of a hawk and see two silhouettes on horseback, man and woman, side by side, riding toward tomorrow. Jude Mercer became more than a man. He became a symbol of loyalty, of change, of a love fierce enough to cross rivers of blood and bridges of bone. And somewhere in that vast wild land, where no law could chain the heart, he lived free, as the sacred husband of the Apache blossom.